Well, hey there, it's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023. We've got a lot to talk about. Sports and non-sports related, sports, technology, geopolitics. There's a lot to talk about today. So it's a podcast. So you're going to listen to Ken talk. And here we go. So the world is changing faster than it ever has. That's kind of just a function of time and human growth and population growth and collective intelligence being logged and categorized and evolved and developed. And what I'm getting at is, you hear the words chat GPT a lot right now, because when we do this right and we can gather kind of all the organizational thought processes that we consider to be rational and try to come up with conclusions about life and the world and come up with discrete facts on things that can be discrete and even complicated facts on things that are not as straightforward. We find a way to organize them, which ChatGPT is doing a pretty good job of it so far that it's surprising everybody. That once we do this, then all of a sudden, human beings can only do so much without the aid of AI. Meaning, no matter how good you are, you're not as good as everyone. You ever heard the saying, no matter how good you are, there's always somebody better? Well, now everybody that's better got all their betterness combined into something like ChatGPT to answer questions the best they can. So no matter what one person does, we're never going to be able to be as good as all information, right? Living in a world of perfect information. So what I'm kind of getting at after all that is I've been trying to create a world for different sports with these algorithms inside the Excel files. This is the college basketball one that's really trying to do a good job of predicting a game outcome based on everything we can get a hold of. Who's playing, where they're playing, do they have guys that are injured? What's the like a calculation of the guys, their contribution to the guys that are injured, so we can show sort of a health percentage, an estimate of a health percentage, which was really helpful yesterday because it pointed out Xavier in Villanova. So without this piece of information, if this said 100 right here, you would not think that Xavier was missing guys, and you would not know to be suspect of what's going on in this game. But because the algorithm points out how different that is, like how reliable are these picks supposed to be? Well, if the health number is not up near 100, then it's not reliable because you don't have the full slate of guys that have been contributing the whole year. So let me back up and say that this algorithm grabs a lot of different things. It, of course, doesn't grab everything. It's not combing Twitter to find out news about, maybe somebody fired a coach or something. I would have no idea in this algorithm if something substantial happened or somebody's injury changed late. Okay. Say it changed right before the game. Well, as of right now, I'm going to show you the process of how we update this, because this is actually updated as of last night. Being Tuesday night, or very, very early in the morning Wednesday, but not with Wednesday's stats. So we need to bring in Wednesday's stats and also get a final score on Colorado and San Diego State. Let's do that. Let's get the score on Colorado. Colorado versus San Diego State college basketball score.
Jaden Leddy scored 14 points and Matt Bradley scored 10 of his 13 in the first 4 minutes of the second half for number 22 San Diego State, which overwhelmed Colorado State 77-58 Tuesday night for its fifth straight win.
I've been asking Google for scores of games for a long time, and I'm noticing a difference in the response. Maybe you are as well. It did not just say Colorado State lost to San Diego State 58 or 77-58 is what they used to say. They used to say it in the wrong order when they're talking about it. I think sometimes they made it confusing when I'd be typing it as we would listen to them, because they would say something like that. That was not that answer. That was more of a play-by-play of how badly they beat and who did really good. Google is all of a sudden on their toes now, because they basically got smacked in the face by Chat GPT, the Open AI organization creating Chat GPT along with other GPT products, I believe, and then partnering with Microsoft. And so Microsoft is now adding it to Bing, and all of a sudden, Bing is supposedly going to be a sort of a source of what Chat GPT is doing, along with integrating it into your workflow, which I'm going to get into a little bit in this video and some ideas that I have for doing this. This is a very exciting time, especially in the tech and computing industry, which it always has been basically for the last 40 years or plus. But point is so what's really interesting now is, okay, here's this manual annoying process that we got to go through every day. We got to find the games and grab the current odds, right? So we go here to sports betting and RotoWire. And I use RotoWire as the source because they do a really good job of organizing it together. You click college basketball, we have all the proper team names streamlined based on the way RotoWire uses them. That's what we have going on in our matrix sheet here, where I matrix all the team names, because there's so many different teams that people refer to teams in different ways. So in order to do that, we have to come up with a unified, streamlined name for everybody. And it's so complicated that even you think, oh, I'll be able to get a team's name right. Like, come on, it's a team's name, it's a school, it'll be fine. No, it's not. No, it's not all at all. There's Louisville and Lafayette and Louisiana, and people call like interchangeably like all of them. There's people that abbreviate their names because their names are so long. Like SMU is Southern Methodist. Sometimes you'll never see Southern Methodist. You just see SMU everywhere. So there's a lot of ways you have to streamline them. And if you're going to work with an AI, you have to get the AI to do that, right? So what I think will happen here, and Excel will be, I believe, still an excellent medium for doing this. And I think it'll probably still be the best medium for doing it quickly, which is you'll tell Bing AI, Chat GPT, or whatever, you'll be like, hey, go fetch the odds for college basketball games currently from RotoWire. And it probably won't even be RotoWire. You'll just start to say, hey, can you go fetch all the college basketball odds in this format? And you'll be like, point it to yesterday's format. You'll be like, in this format, can you paste it in the odds compiler sheet right here? Or do it at the top. We'll set up it'll involve itself in its own automatic macro essentially within Excel, and we'll just be like, hey, can you add odds or update? Can you add odds or can you update odds for today? Right? Can you do it for tomorrow? I mean, this thing's going to be preparing itself, right? And just doing this. And maybe every time you open the file, you can ask it to run that process and refresh everything. And this is what it would do. So it would bring in the odds, and then it would check to make sure that we have placeholders in the cube for all those odds, which we do. So we've got games all the way down to Boise State. Now, I've always said this is the poor man's version of doing this file, is you just do this and you don't update anything else. And you see that yesterday we ended up 17-9. And that sad Air Force loss is really the blemish on the day, the only other value pick of the freaking day. Anyway, maybe using OpenAI and Bing and adding better stats and having it comb through Twitter. Okay, you can have it do that. Anyway, poor man's version is you just update this and then you look at today. And this gives you a pretty good look. This is like 95% pretty good, but it's not current. It's not current with all the other stats. And it doesn't necessarily have the best distribution for projection of scoring, which is another thing I'm going to go into. So there's a whole lot going on here. So what else do you have to do to get this thing current? You would say, OpenAI, go get Bing. AIBing. I think I called it AIBing. AIBing, I like it because AIBing, like, it sounds like you're ordering around an army. You're like, AIBing, do this. Yeah, AIBing, even though it's got too many syllables. All right, so we grabbed odds. Let's go over to stats is the next one. All right. So here you have to go to fantasy. So you'd be like, hey, open AIBing, go grab college basketball player stats. Right? They're right here. There's also the injury report we need. There's three things you have to have every day. And then there's another one you can have which I may not do today because it's annoying. Team stats. See, there's injuries, player stats, team stats. Those are the three that I grabbed from RotoWire. And you see this process. Well, it doesn't take that long. We're talking about under a couple minutes to update basically all of the 4 sheets that you need to update here. I've done it. Oftentimes I'll test it by listening to a song and singing along with the song and seeing if I get each sport done in under 2 minutes. So this is the team stat part. Okay, I just copied the team stat one. You have to paste that as a regular paste in the file, or there's a weird thing that happens with the record of the team. So team stat was the first one that I just did as we're working backwards. Now I'm grabbing player stats, which is huge. The player stat database that you're grabbing here is thousands and thousands of rows long. So it takes a while to paste. And it's a tremendous, you're grabbing every player, and I'm not even using the player all that much. I'm just using them in the injury and contribution calculation. I'm not even using them in the point projection calculation. So there's more we could be doing with the player stats in here. I just always, the college basketball algorithm has worked so well without needing that I just haven't worried about it. But I can't get our projected scores exactly right and crushing the spread. So that's an area where that would help. Now we paste the injury report. So we'd be like, AIBing refresh the injury report, and it would do that. And then we have to refresh the injury pivot. There's one more area, which is current school stats. We could go to Sports Reference and grab this, but I'm not even going to worry about it. The videos are long enough as they are. It's not that big of a deal. It's only one day's stats for yesterday's games that are not in there. All right, so we now refresh. Things will change. You'll notice change, especially in the health numbers. And slightly. This is super slightly. But there were some slight changes there. There should be anyway. So 59 games today. So after all that, what do we bet? Well, I'm working on my whole crazy strategy about betting both sides of the game and finding close games, if you've caught any of the videos I've been doing. So I'll be doing that. But what about just traditionally, like, where are our home teams? Are there any good lines? Are there any value picks? There are 2 value picks, it looks like, over there. So we'll do our line value sort, which is if you want to pick home teams at the best lines and throw them together, this is the way to do it. You can see the 2 value picks are, see, we don't need this. I'm not going to worry about over-unders because they're not working great. So I'm not even going to worry about that. Spread, we don't have a profit yet. Okay, so basically, it's saying that Lehigh is the best value at home at minus 170 because they should be minus 196. Okay. Yep, that's what that says. So basically, in its basic form, you're supposed to grab all the way down to line value negative 50-ish. Yeah, you can see the lines are okay for these games. And the algorithm's normally profitable around this negative 50 or higher for sure, most of the time. So it's these games. Lehigh, Army, Clemson, NC State, Southern Illinois, Winthrop, and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's injured, but so's Temple. This line's bad. So don't worry about this game because that's weird with too many injuries. And NC State is injured against Wake Forest. 90 is right at our cutoff. And that's minus 250. So I guess you stay away from that too. Lehigh, Army, Clemson, Southern Illinois. I thought Northern Iowa wasn't bad. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Lehigh, Army, Clemson. 170, 160, 210. Clemson beats Syracuse at home. Going into Clemson's really tough, I've heard. Army's supposed to beat BU and Lehigh over Bucknell. Well, I mean, all these margins are over 5% at home, and I've seen worse lines for home teams, honestly. What about this Winthrop over Campbell? Super close margin, though. So the margin is really different. All right, so I'll say these three. Two of those are value pick, and Clemson's at home, which is usually a good bet if you know anything about college basketball. So there's some home team stuff here. Now, our away teams are where we're going to see any underdogs, which are popping up at the top at no bump. There's some reasonable margins here. GW apparently could beat Rhode Island. Indiana State could beat Belmont. Butler's injured against DePaul, so that's a no. Delaware, these are bad margins. So these teams will go away with a 5% bump. So, you do want to bump this for the home teams a little bit. Yeah, we'll ask Open AI Bing, what's the best home bump to use for yesterday? Just ask it a question. Be like, what was the best home bump to use? And run all the calculations and test out different home bumps and be like, the best home bump yesterday was 9.4% or whatever. It could do that. It can do a lot for you if you get it to understand. Like the whole thing about the Chat GPT is it's taking just random data that's out there and understanding it like a human brain, or at least understanding it enough so when it tells us what it thinks, we understand it. It's making the data understandable to us. Quite fascinating stuff. And you just have to follow up in this area, because if you don't keep evolving the algorithms to work with AI, you're going to have imperfect information. So I don't want to go through every basketball game because, come on, right? If you want to copy or something to buy this, you can update it, or you can start working with Bing AI or whatever to start updating it yourself. Like, people are going to be able to go off their own way, and just it's going to be, how can we communicate with the AI to get it to do exactly what we want? That's the stage we're at right now already. Like, it's already pulling data for us. Now we just need to figure out how to massage all this information into something that's digestible enough and complete enough to do what we want. Crafting questions, right? Because if something is answering specific questions, then it matters how specific our questioning is when it comes to getting a very detailed response. It's fascinating. All right, so we have a huge list of these 60 games. You really need a copy of this to pour through it, to dig through every game. I can't talk about every game, right? So there you go. All right, there are, just for reference, just want to know how many home teams there are. There are 24 home teams. Every home team above 10% margin, they have a 90% win rate, but pull out somebody like an injured Cincinnati. So that means that these games, historically, there's 11 of them. You can expect to go between 9-2, 10-1, or 11-0 is what those teams are probably going to do. It's amazing how consistent that is. All right, so that's college basketball. Let's go over to hockey, because hockey is another one that you want to get it automated. So I would be like, Bing AI, freeze yesterday's cube data so that it doesn't change and we don't retroactively change our projections. Bring down the next day. Go over and get the odds from RotoWire for NHL. And there are 3 games today. And grab those odds, and we're just going to bring them into our odds sheet in the NHL file, daily odds sheet. Paste in over yesterday's odds, getting rid of yesterday's, and then you just have to connect the cube, and you could just keep adding to the odds sheet and make this really easy every day. But I just do it this way because it's cleaner. So you're bringing in the connection to the odds that you just did for today. And you're bringing it down for as many games as there are, just 3 games. And you're pulling the date down so that we now have today's games. And you can do this one in the poor man's version, which is really fast if you want to. And it won't be super complete, but it will be pretty darn good. And what you do is you need to grab the big one is the starting goalies. Because without the correct starting goalies, nothing else works. So you grab the starting goalies and you're going to paste them right here. And of course, I'd love to just ask, Bing AI, hey, can you grab the projected starting goalie for the game here and put him right here in this column next to the team? The team over here. Could you do that? Could you do that, please? That would be awesome. And then this isn't going to be a really easy one for Chat GPT or whatever, or Bing to do. Or it's going to be Google eventually too, because Google's not going to let this stand. They're not going to let ChatGPT take over everything for Bing. They're going to have to offer their own counter AI essentially, which will be, hey, Google grab the starting goalie for each one of these games and put them here in the proper name format, right? There's a lot of specifics you would put in that question, but that's how it would work. Once you do that, you get a super quick version of today. 22nd. And this is pretty good, but we still would want to go update goalie stats and player stats here, goalie stats here, and injury report here. All those things. I'm not going to do them right now because you can tell videos, we'll have an AI do it. It's going to get boring at this point. And also standings. You also grab standings too. But let's just glance at today real quick because I watch a lot of hockey and I have an idea how teams are doing as well. This makes sense. This would make sense. Well, Islanders have had some interesting comeback wins recently, but they're still having trouble. Winnipeg with Hellebuck. Notice the good goaltending matchup here. This is another thing like yesterday and the day before where it says really good goalies means an under. So this game probably goes under more than anything, and the winner's probably Winnipeg. But you can see it's actually within a goal, which means it's within a bounce. So don't expect Winnipeg to run away with it. Expect this to be a low-scoring game. Chicago and Dallas. Good goalie. Jackson Stauber. Dallas is back-to-back game, though. I'm sorry, Chicago's back-to-back game against Dallas. That's why this line is insane. Very tough game to wager on here. This is not probably going to be one of the games that although, why is Dallas playing so awful? That's the only weird thing here is why are they playing so bad? That makes you, anytime some team is really not having it, it makes you want to bet a huge underdog like this. So maybe it's straight bettable a little bit before the game because it is hockey and it is plus 340. They just beat somebody yesterday in spectacular fashion too, right? They beat Vegas, but they went up against a goalie who was first up. This is no Laurent Brossoit. Jake Ottinger is no Laurent Brossoit. This is a very tough game for them to win. I'm talking myself out of making that bet, actually. They're probably never going to lead. Now, here you have Calgary, Arizona, which is coming up as the closest game of all of them, sort of, about 3.4 to 2.7. Vejmelka gets a better rating than Markstrom. I wonder if Markstrom is the problem with Calgary because I can't figure out exactly what's wrong with this team. But to see the 57% next to Markstrom, that's saying that of all the goalies today, Markstrom is the worst. And he's the worst by 15% against Hellebuck, 14% against Ottinger, even 9% against Jackson Stauber. Like he's not doing well. And when you see a goaltending matchup that is in favor of the other team that's a dog, this one probably will be a closer game. And this is probably why if Markstrom actually goes, and he's only expected now, so I would wait. But one of those games that I'm going to play both sides is probably going to be this one. Yeah, this one, I think I'd start with an under here. I'm starting to think about how you play both sides with an over under, because your over under lines obviously also switch throughout the game. And it made me realize you can do the same thing, I guess. They're not offered positive lines often. Usually they're always like minus 115. But I think you can do it where like you bet uh you can find a sweet spot where you bet under 5.5 and over 3.5 sometimes or something like that. And you can get both of those lines at reasonable. And then if it's right in the middle, you win both. So I think there might be a way to do that. But I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I'm just gonna go for winners for now because it's easier. So Winnipeg would be the pick to win, but you can see that it's one of those where it thinks the under again. And what's the under set at? 5.5. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Go back to college basketball real quick to see if I can give you guys anything else. Or yeah, I have to do this because for those of you who are following along with the strategy about betting both sides, I said that away teams that are supposed to potentially cause problems and maybe win, that those games are the dogfight games, and those are often the games where you want to be able to play both sides. So that would mean that you could think of starting out with a bet on Bellarmine, assuming they might get ahead so that you could get a positive one on Jacksonville at some point, hopefully in the first half. Lipscomb and Florida Gulf Coast is another one. Anything where you can start to get lines closer to 200. Or, on the other side, the home teams, but there are no real huge favorites. Look at how that's amazing. This is sorted by margin, meaning the closest games, it is very rare for us to find anything with a deviation greater than 0.65 units. 1.65, 1.3, because these minuses, here's a minus 375. And that's because Massachusetts is injured. So that makes sense. Wow, these lines are all of a sudden quite reasonable. So that's fascinating. I'm not used to seeing a string of 100s and minus one. Like usually it starts to go 2 and 300, right? Really fast, especially when it comes to home teams, right? See how all the home teams are nothing's. There's only one, two, three games that are minus 200. Whereas on the away side, there are, how many are better than minus 200? Ridiculous amount. Of all these, I can only see like 3 or 4 that are over minus 200 or plus 200, either way. 1, 2, 3 out of 29 away games. Fascinating. That's really crazy. So what that means is that these lines have trimmed down so much that these home teams should have some value here because it's supposed to look like this. The way the algorithm has it, look at what the algorithm's implied lines are, right? Like we would hopefully want to have these a little better, but this means that, the line the odds makers are offering is worse, which makes sense. It should be worse than the implied line because the algorithm's better at it, so that the odds makers want to make sure that we don't get value if they're using the algorithm. That makes perfect sense. Now, our stuff goes up like this and get 200s here at margin of 8%, but it doesn't do that on the away side. Meaning you get this huge string of minus 100, which means there must be value in these home teams. Must be. Because some of these are supposed to be favorites probably, and they're not, because they're slowly off the margin kicked. All right, I know I'm talking really weird words and stuff, but basically I'm trying to figure out why the lines are they've fallen within a more narrow range of this like minus 200 threshold for like 20%, because these games are toss-up games. That is really crazy. So that's good. That's good for live betting both sides, because as soon as the game starts, all of this goes out the window and nobody cares anymore what the original line was at the beginning of the game. Everyone cares about what the score is. And so this stuff then fluctuates back to its normal insanity of when somebody's up by 7, they look like they're going to win, and everyone doesn't want to bet the other team when the game's totally going to has many opportunities to flip going forward. So basically, you watch these games, you watch all games, but if you have, certainly if you ever have a home team that is down in the first half, any of these guys, with the exception of maybe NC State, but any of these guys, anything on here, except for Cincinnati, NC State, any of these teams go down and their line all of a sudden becomes good at a positive line, or even a lot better. Meaning, if Vermont falls down 9 to Binghamton in the first half and all of a sudden goes to minus 115, or 125, you that's a good pick. Because if it's up here on the margin scale and the line was terrible and they're just behind, but they've got time to come back, they probably will because they're a home team. So you look for those situations, and when you find them, you bet them because, I mean, can you think of anything different from a team that was minus 1,200 to start and getting them for minus 125, even though they're down? Like, it's just a completely different, you're rooting for the same binary outcome of win or loss. It's one of the two. So why wouldn't you want to get the team at minus 125 instead of paying minus 1,200? And the only response is, well, I don't want to take them down 9 points in the first half, though. Like, I didn't know they were going to start off throwing bricks. I'm like, yeah, it's a long game. Like I'm not saying bet this with 5 minutes to go in the game if they're down 5 or 6. That's a different situation. You have to give them enough time. So I almost want to call it first half betting both sides action, because you want enough time in the first half where the lead switches. And for example, yesterday was a great example of this, the Kansas and Oklahoma State game, I think it was. Or Kansas State and what game was this? It was Kansas or Kansas State and somebody good. Where's this game? Baylor and Kansas State. This was a great example. This one had a reasonable line. And these are two strong teams that are like authoritative and how, so they go on runs, and Kansas State got ahead. And so Baylor was at a positive line. Well, the algorithm said Baylor could win a close game on the road because they're a really good team. They came back in the first half down like 7 or 8, and all of a sudden we're up 2 or 4. Their positive line switched to a favored line because they went on this nuts run, and Kansas State became available at like 150, 125, 150. It was amazing because it looked like they were coming back and they were just going to walk them for some reason. It's just the flow of the game. So here you have, in the first half, you have an opportunity to guarantee yourself profit by picking up Baylor State when they fell behind at the beginning, but you would try them because the algorithm said they can win this game. So it's supposed to be close. They're not on the other side of this, right? They're not on the losing side of the projection. Algorithm has them with a 3.3 margin with no bump. So they could win. So in that sense, you can bet an away team when it goes down in the beginning, right? You can. You can bet, you're trying to pick up these teams on the left that fell behind early in the first, so you can bet them because of what happens in the second. In the second, you're waiting for them to come back, but they're supposed to come back because the algorithm says they're supposed to win. And as soon as they start looking like they're going to come back or taking the lead, this team's line over here, which oftentimes was an underdog to begin the game, all of a sudden it looks like, Toledo's coming back to beat Akron. Or sorry, we're looking at yesterday, right? Let's go back to today. Sorry. Yeah, today. Like, let's say like down here that Boise State falls behind in New Mexico by 7 in the first half. You can get Boise State for plus 175 or something. You bet them. And then as the second half comes around and they come back and they take the lead, say like with 10 minutes left, they're up by 5. New Mexico will all of a sudden be at plus like 400 or 500 or something like that. You then can bet that side of it, right? Now you'll have 2 bets going on the game. You'll have a Boise State original bet that was going to pay you like 7.75 units profit that they're going to be offering you a cash out because they're way ahead. You pick your spot and cash out this one when it's going to pay like 90% of its potential payout. And so instead of like if you bet $100 and it was going to pay 174 profit or 274 total, sometimes they'll offer you like 250, or something, and they'll take $20 off. You take it and then you hold, hoping New Mexico accidentally comes back ridiculously late, because you've got this enormous payout waiting on this one. And you may even have cash out opportunities waiting on this one. So you can time it right where you guarantee yourself profit, cash out one of them, and you are, more than free rolling on the other one at that point at an amazing line. And the reason why you got an amazing line and you were able to bet it is because you grabbed what you thought to be a favorite in the first half when they were down, which gives you the ability to bet the other side in the second half at unbelievable lines when this team actually does come back. So it's one of those things where crazy comebacks and lead changes late result in you having one of these ridiculous dogs that wins at like plus 500 after probably cashing out another bet where you also won money on the game. You can win on both sides of the game by doing this with game flow. And I do think I've picked up on how to handle the end of games with this. And I think one thing that will happen is the sportsbooks will stop letting you wager on a game in the last like few minutes, because there's too many binary outcomes being determined in the last couple minutes of games that the odds change so dramatically, as they should, because when one team's up with 3 seconds left versus when they're up with 45 seconds left is sometimes a completely different world. And so, the odds that they win change dramatically. So I understand why that happens. So if that availability is going to be there to wager on that, then I guess you try to take advantage of it. All right, that's a long video. Those are some picks. That's some advice. Good luck on Wednesday. May all of your picks be winning. Yeah, may all the picks win.